What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. Um, we've got a topic today that we're going to talk about here in a second, and then at the end, I want to bag on Harley Benton's more. Now, actually, I want to update you on the Harley Benton saga as we move through that particular situation at the end. So we'll talk about that at the end. It's sort of related to this. But let's talk about today's subject first. So I think one of the biggest questions we should ask ourselves as guitar players, in fact, I've been thinking about this, and then somebody in the comments brought this up, and I'm like, you know what? This would make its own video. This is great. How much of what you know, or what you think you know, or what you believe to be true about guitars, I know that those are three different things if you really get into the definitions of those things, come from your own experience versus come from things you heard on YouTube, things you saw on Reddit, things you saw on Facebook, things you saw in a forum, or in general, somebody just repeating something that they've heard for 20 years or that they heard 20 years ago, versus your own lived experience. We all do it. I'm not saying that anybody's stupid for doing this. It's human nature to try to shortcut learning. You try to learn from other people. You try to learn from their mistakes. You try to, right? But the problem is that when we get into very subjective, not objective, very subjective things, use those words correctly. Somebody says ceramic pickups are harsh, for example. Okay. Who said so? Have you owned one? Have you compared one? Have you recorded one? Have you tested? Have you used a variety of them to understand why people might think that, because they're not all like that? Or did you just hear it enough times and now it becomes true? There's many, many things like that. All these guitar catchphrases. Cheap guitars are just as good is the one that's on my mind right now. Okay. How do you know? What playing experience and comparing experience do you have without input from the internet? Meaning, just period. Just period. Expensive guitars are a waste of money. Okay. Now, a lot of those things might come from your upbringing. They might come from your personal financial situation. They might come from a lot of things outside that, right? But I'm just saying, once you hear those a few times, then all of a sudden they just become truth, when in reality they mean nothing. Actually, there's no meaning to those statements at all whatsoever. Nitro, breeze, all that stuff. There's so many. Heavy guitars sustain longer. Locking tuners stay in tune better. Top wrapping, blah, blah, blah. Brand doesn't matter. All of those things. Now, some of that stuff might be a little bit true. Heavy guitars can sustain longer if they're, right? There's a whole list of ifs, because you could have a heavy guitar with a bad nut and it doesn't sustain, right? So there's things, and you could dive into those things. Some of that stuff's flat out wrong. Tuning stability does not come with locking tuners. Convenience comes with locking tuners, right? Just like that kind of stuff. But people won't be able to tell you where they learned it. They won't be able to tell you, Bob told me this on the 12th of May, 1974. And I've believed it ever since. People don't usually do that. Unless, it's their dad or something. But even then, they don't remember guitar. I don't remember when my dad taught me stuff. You don't know where it came from. It just sort of appeared. In reality, lived experience is the best way to understand all this stuff. I think this is one of the reasons I have a difficult time with YouTube, because the reason I have opinions about stuff, like the reason I have this opinion about this Harley Benton, is actual experience. I had somebody tell me yesterday that I was making it all up and that you're just imagining things. And I'm like, well, the photos that I shared are real. You can look at the photos and you can see the problems. So I'm not imagining it. It's real. And this guitar is on my bench and it is awful. And it is real, right? And these are real problems. This guitar has real problems that affect its playability, its functionality, and because of the financials of it, make it not a good recommendation. This guitar is not good for a beginner. Now, for those of you that are big modders and stuff, it's probably great, actually. It would be a really good guitar for that. But I'm just saying, like, for beginners, it's not a good option. I had somebody tell me the other day that I'm wax potting pickups wrong. And I'm like, okay, I wax potted 23 pickups today. And I don't mean to be like one of those, well, I've done it for so many. I don't like the bona fides guy who jumps in the comments and immediately, well, I've been a guitar tech for 37 years and therefore, right? So I don't like to be that guy but at some point you're like, okay, I have a wax pot right there. It's not on right now, but it'll be on in about 10 minutes. I'm going to use it like 20 times today. I've wax potted like 23,000 pickups or something like by now. It's a lot. And so, messing around with it, experimenting with it every day. Okay, I could defer to your experience, but the problem is that your experience consists of post count. Right? Remember in the old days when we had forums and it would tell you the post count of the person, and somehow that was like, and then they got the little credibility badges by as many post counts as they got. Post count is not experience. Post count is I said a thing more than once, right? It doesn't have to be true. I've had hundreds of guitars in here, right? We've bought almost every brand imaginable. I mean, I've tried to buy as many different, and in fact, the ones that I have not bought, I'm on a quest, right? And this is not to brag about anything. This is because, and I think people get this wrong about me in general, but I think people in general too, me specifically, but people in general too. Well, you're just showing off, or status or whatever. No, the reason I want all this stuff is this exact point in our conversation today. Experience matters. I want to experience as many things as possible. We're going on a road trip for vacation, and we spend hours planning that road trip because if we have this particular amount of time, we want to experience and go as many different cool places as possible. That's how we live our lives. We want to try as many different kind of coffees. This is my family, not just me. This is our whole family. We want to try as many different coffees as possible. I'm trying different mower blades this year. I don't really like them. Might have to change them. I'll try different weed whacker string. I'll try different fabric in my boxers. I don't care how much it costs. I want to try as many different things as possible. Different amps, different cables, although I'm pretty stuck on my cables now. And I will tell you right now that my opinions about guitar stuff and my knowledge of guitar facts, those are two different things. I realize that. I try to separate those as much as possible. are based on something that is louder than internet consensus at this point. If you ask me about a set of guitar strings, I will be able to tell you. In fact, I've actually documented that and shared it with you. I want to experience things. The other thing that the internet struggles with when it comes to this, and we're going to talk about this when we go over the Harley Benton situation, is that it's okay to change your mind when you learn a new thing. You should learn new things and change your mind. For example, with the Harley Benton thing, I genuinely, and people don't believe me, they think I just wanted to bash on the guitar. But for those of you that really know me, you know. In fact, I was talking to Chris at Texas Toast about this last night. He's like, this has turned into a complete train wreck of a deal. Like, we're talking about people talking about it. And I'm like, man, I wanted it to be good. Like, I really did. My plan was, I'm not going to do it now. Spoiler alert. But my plan was, if that guitar was actually like as good as an Epiphone, for example, or I know it's a different style guitar, but if it was as good as like a classic vibe Squire, where you're like, yeah, it's a good cheap guitar, and I think we could do something with it, then I was going to mod it and I was going to do a bunch of stuff with it. But it's just not good. It just isn't good. Like, it's just not good. It's okay, the Temu double cut that I bought is worse than this guitar, but not by much. Not by much. I mean, this guitar you can actually play, sort of, where the Temu guitar was not playable. So there is that. But is it functional as a newly purchased instrument? No, it is not. So I was willing to change my mind. I was willing to, okay, let's do a video. Now I'm not going to accept any money. I'm not going to accept any sponsorships. I am not going to give you a referral code. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I still don't want to do any of that. I don't want to gain financially from this brand, because I don't think, after everything I've said over the years, I'm going to stick to that, and now I know I'm going to stick to that. But I wasn't going to say, well, I'm changing my mind and I'm flip-flopping. Let's talk about that. So flip-flopping because you're like all of a sudden going to gain from it financially or something. I don't want to do that. But I was willing to change my mind. I was willing to be like, okay, I get it. And actually, let me just say this. I have changed my mind. Okay. If you are willing to accept the financial risk, and if you are an experienced guitar modder, I understand why people like those guitars. I don't, still. I cannot recommend them for the purpose that most people tried to get me to. But beginners, no, this guitar is not a good beginner guitar. It is not. But for those of you that are modder folks, I mean, if you're willing to take the chance and willing to put the work in, I understand. I don't like them. I'm not gonna join the cult, but I do understand, right? Like, I get it. So in that respect, I am willing to meet you that far, for sure, definitely. Is that compromising my principles? No, because I still feel the same way for my personal self. But I really get you, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're saying when you say that. Now, everybody that's like, but we need these for beginner guitars, that's crap. That guitar is not a beginner guitar. Changing your mind when you learn facts, changing your mind when you're presented with something that is from somebody's experience and not from an opinion, is a good. That's, you know what that's called? It's called learning. That's what that's called. And curiosity that leads to that is more valuable than, certainty in thinking a thing, right? Like saying, I wonder what would happen if, we always talk about there's why guys and why not guys, and I'm a why not guy for sure. And I'm definitely I wonder what would happen if you stuck this in here. I'm the kid who put the screwdriver in the outlet when I was a kid. I am. I'm the person who's like, you know what? I wonder what would happen. And I will take that risk for you. I will. But experiment. This is where the fun is. Experiment. Swap pickups. Adjust your pickup height. Play around with different string brands. Well, I've been playing strings for 30 years. Okay, cool, but man, times are changing, fellas. Like, play through a different amp. Trade guitars. Like, have friends. Get out of your mom's basement. I would definitely wash the Cheeto dust off of your hands before you ask to borrow somebody else's guitar, but do it. Like, play other people's stuff. Actually have experiences and see if your experiences can exceed your post count. That's what I would do. I mean, I know that sounds funny and it's like sort of making fun, but it's true. Like, there are people who have a higher post count than an actual playing experience. Like, a lot of people do. See if you can flip that around. Like, I genuinely mean that. See if you can flip that around. Because here's what happens. You take on somebody else's opinion, and then it just becomes a limit. When the kids were little, and to this day, I've said this many times on this channel because it's a principle of life I think is really important. When the kids were little, they had some strongly opinionated family members who would like feed them information. And so when they would give me you know what I think? I think this. And I could just tell that it was somebody else's voice coming out of their mouth. You know what I mean? And so I'd just be like, okay, where did you learn that? Not where did you learn that? Why do you think that? Why is that your opinion? And I would make them defend their opinion and their belief. And if they could not, then I would allow them to learn other stuff and see if they could build their own opinion. And I wanted them to set aside hearing it from somebody else and automatically believing it versus figuring it out and really thinking about it for themselves and taking inputs from other places other than where I'm pretty sure they got their opinion, and putting a bunch of things together and actually forming their own opinion instead of just taking something that was fed from a place and just automatically believing it. Because here's what happens. With the kids, they have had to spend years like unlearning limits that were mentally put on them by other people. And now they're okay. They're great. They've grown up into amazing people. And to this day, my daughter or my son will walk in the room and they will give me an opinion and they'll be like this. And they'll like say, this is how I got there. They've learned that like, I'm going to tell you what I think. And here's the list of the reasons why I think it. We trained them well. Why can't people do that with the internet? Like, I just, when somebody says a thing, I just go, okay, I know what forum you've been hanging out in. You know, I can tell, you were in the praise and worship group because everybody thinks your shirt needs to be long and that you need to take pictures of your shoes with your jazz master. I can just tell where you've been hanging out, right? That thing goes off it's the mister for the lizard, and every day it goes off at 8:00, and that's how I know when to turn the light on. Yeah, the internet is a great place to wrap up, to learn ideas and stuff, but it should only be your starting point. Then it should take you on your own journey, and you should actually learn stuff and not just glom on to every opinion. So let's talk about it in context with this Harley Benton deal. My Facebook right now, you guys, I posted some pictures on Instagram and on Facebook of this guitar. It's got cracked binding because the frets are like smashed into it. It's got, the neck is in the shape of like an S. So it's not, and it's the shape of it's different than on the other side. The fretboard is milled, not flat. And then the neck actually is, so if you look at you put a straight edge across the top of the frets and you're like, okay, the fretboard's not flat, but then you put it on the neck, like a notched one on the neck. And you're like, well, weird, because the neck is not the same shape as the fretboard. It's sort of weird. Anyway, So it's a weird deal. Could I get it playable at some point? I suppose I'm gonna try to at least set it up. And there's a bunch of other things with it. And some people are like, thank you for showing this honestly and not just promoting them because you can promote them. But some people are like so indoctrinated in the cult of Harley Benton that no matter what I say, and I show you a photo with this is what it's like, they cannot accept that the Holy Benton is not a good guitar. And I'm trying to be nuanced about it. I'm trying to say, for a beginner, no. If you want to take this project on and mess with this, go ahead. But don't recommend it to other people. You know, Harley Bentons are sort of like used Land Rovers. I love them. I actually love used Land Rovers. I have had 3 or 4. They're great. If you know some stuff ahead of time, if you're already a nerd. Would I buy one for my daughter and send her to Colorado in it? No. Absolutely not. Would I recommend to my best friend to buy one? Absolutely not. Because, you got to know how to do head gaskets on a Saturday afternoon. You know what I mean? Like there's things, and there's stuff. You got to know stuff. So I would not recommend it. And it's the same thing with this Harley Benton stuff. And that's how I feel about it. And it's true. Like you look at this stuff and you go, okay, 50-50 shot. I got a bad one. The financial side of it doesn't make sense, at least for us in the United States. Now that's another thing. If you live in Australia, if you live in Asia, if you live in Germany, it could be different because your financial obligation to the guitar could be different than mine. But where we live, not a good idea. I lost $158. Even if I tried to return this thing, I lost $158. And somebody's going to be like, well, they'll probably just send you a free guitar and then let you keep the old one. Okay, well, then that means I get a 50-50 shot of getting another good one. What happens if that one's better? They're just going to keep sending me guitars. This is not a customer service experience that is sustainable as a customer, much less as a business, them selling me a guitar. It just makes no sense. So, when you're looking at this from a consumer and business and looking at this as from a real, take the religion and the cult and everything and set it aside for a second, which people cannot do. I don't know why they can't do it. I don't know why they can't do it. Set that aside for a second and go, okay, this is what we're looking at here. I waited a week for the guitar. I had to pay $69 in tariffs. I had to pay $89 in shipping. I get it here. So I'm out $158 no matter what. For a guitar that I know is just going to be a cheap guitar anyway, right? On the very best, it's just going to be a cheap guitar. Okay, cool. Which is great. I was hoping that's what it was going to be. A good cheap guitar. And then I get it, and it's just not good. And everybody says 50-50. Well, I got the bad 50. Had I got the good 50, here's what I would tell you. Still, the risk is not worth it. Financially, the risk is not worth it. Yeah, but you got a good one. Yeah, what if I didn't? What if I didn't? There's no way to recommend this to a new guitar player. And the absolute lunacy. I mean lunacy. I mean absolute full-on stupidity. Stupidity that has come out. People are like, well, you don't know how to set the guitar up correctly. Okay. Yeah, I've never set up a guitar before. People are saying, well, those holes are drilled. That doesn't mean anything. Well, it does if you're a beginner because you don't have tools. You don't have anything. The holes on the control plates are all drilled wrong and they're all stripped out. So to service the guitar, you can't get the screws out. You actually have to just pull them out. Now they don't stay in. So now the person has to go, because the stuff's made out of like freaking cork or something. I don't know what the wood is, but it's terrible. Anyways, so the control plates, the holes are like all stripped out. Like I couldn't even get them out. I had to like pry the thing out, and now I'm going to have to drill new holes actually to keep it on the guitar. That's not beginner stuff, right? That's not a beginner guitar player kind of stuff. The lumpy neck is not a beginner guitar, you know. All those things, and people cannot. Well, what about Gibson? We're not talking about Gibson. But here's the cool part about Gibson. If you have a problem, you just return it. You know why? Because they have a worldwide dealer network set up for this. Does it cost money? Yeah. But I probably would have had a new guitar already. Like, for example, if I were to return a Gibson, I probably would have bought it at Sweetwater. Sweetwater just would have sent me the second guitar out. What they did last time, I had a Gibson with a broken brace on an acoustic. I think it was shipping damage. And so what they did is they put a hold on my credit card and just sent me the second guitar. It said, hey, just send us back the second one within a certain amount of days, and we'll just pull the card out, hold off the card, and you just tell us, you know, or we'll just leave it as pending or whatever. And, you just tell us which one you want to keep, which I knew which one I was going to keep because the first one was actually broken. But that's customer service. That's what you're paying for with a dealer, with a well-established dealer network. You don't have that, right? But the minute I say anything negative about Harley Benton, these people are insane. I mean, and I really mean stupid, okay? I mean saying things that are not even, it's what we talked about this morning, regurgitating a thing that they've heard about their religion, and all of a sudden, you know, they're like, I don't know if they're facing east when they say this crap, but they are literally that in. And they're like saying stuff that just makes no sense. Somebody told me yesterday, well, the neck is wavy, just raise the tailpiece. That'll fix it. No, it won't. That has nothing to do with it. That's what I'm saying. Like and it is that level of just like anything I say is wrong because this religion, I don't understand it. So when I give you a hard time about a Harley Benton, I'm not talking about the guitar. I want everybody to understand that. When I say something about a cheap guitar, I'm not talking about the guitar. Most of the time, the guitars are great. It's you. Don't forget that.